book One Forbidden Paradise. It was during the American Thanksgiving season last year that she met Pastor Rick. The man had been on a gospel outreach to Montego Bay. He was a guest at Mrs. Clark Guest House, where Elise worked as a cook. Mrs. Clark was Elise's boss when she lived in Montego Bay. Woman was popularly known for her bakery and bread and breakfast guest house. It wasn't a huge setup, just a place with 5 tiny rooms. The entrance has a little restaurant set to serve breakfast to interested buyers and guests. Elise worked there, and she learnt to cook some foreign foods and also helped with the cleaning and upkeep of the property. Mrs. Clark and her family trusted her with being in charge of the caretaking of the property. That evening, she was tending to the guests in the breakfast section when she noticed Pastor Rick's eyes following her as she worked. Elise pretended not to see him until he ordered a refill for his cup of tea. Then, she had no choice but to talk to him. "Here is your tea, sir." That was how Mrs. Clark taught them all to attend to all guests and customers with courtesy. "How are you, girl?" Pastor Rick looked up from the book he was reading. "Fine, sir." She was so shocked that he spoke to her. Elise kept her face bowed. "Why aren't you in school? The day is Thursday, isn't it?" He took a sip from the cup of tea she had placed in front of him. "I don't go to school, sir." Elise couldn't recall the last time she talked about school with anyone. She had long buried her dream of becoming a lawyer. Now, all she did was clean stoves, make beds, tea, and take care of Mrs. Clark's property. She had no time to think about school and did not want to talk to this man today about why she was not in school. "Why not? I've noticed you working here since I arrived a few days ago. So why aren't you in school burying your face in books or playing with friends?" "It is a long story, sir. I have some work to finish up with." On cue, another customer called on her to place his order. That saved her from having to explain her ordeals to a total stranger. "How about you meet me here when you are done? By all means, you have to tell me your story. I will be waiting." The man was sure not taking no for an answer, so she agreed to speak with him later. Elise's workload reduced when one of the sales girls showed up for a double shift. She looked across the counter and caught Pastor Rick staring at her. She might as well take a break right now. Elise walked up to Pastor Rick. "I'm not exactly done with work, but I can take a break right now." She clasped her hands together, then loosened them. She wiped them against the trousers she had on as they were getting sweaty. "Good. Would you like to sit here or go somewhere else to talk?" No. Elise wasn't ready for the number of stares that would follow her if she tried sitting. There would definitely be whispers. It also wouldn't seem right if Mrs. Clark got in to find her slacking on duties. "Where would you like to go then?" He closed the book he was reading and placed it on the table. With his jacket in hand, he arose from the chair. "Let's just take a walk outside. There is a beach across the back fence." Elise didn't know why. She felt comfortable with the man. She didn't do well with talking to strangers at all. But a peaceful aura came with the slender, almost bald man standing close to her. He followed her lead. They didn't say anything. They just basked in the silence. Everywhere was quiet, which wasn't odd since it was almost noon. School hadn't closed and folks were out at their work. Very few people roamed the streets. "I love it any time I come to Montego Bay, aside from coming to oversee the church here and taking a break from the stress and hassle at home. This place gives me a reassuring and settling. The streets are getting busy and filled with more tourists than ever. Before you know it, Montego Bay will be far busier than you can imagine." "I know, I see what you are saying, but I'm referring to myself." "Oh, all right. As I was saying, Elise." She cuts in. "Sorry, Elise. I thought I heard people call you Elsa." "Elise, I saw you the night I arrived. I don't. You know if you recognize me from that night, but you welcomed me." "I can't recall if I did. There were a lot of people to check in that night." "Yes, other ministers like me." "So why aren't you in school?" Elise watched him run his hands across his head, his hands fiddling with the tips of his jacket. "The story is quite long and sad." "Then lay it on me. I want to know. You seem really smart and you speak fluently." "I used to be smart." Elise laughed. "I haven't stepped into a school for 6 years now." She saw that Pastor Rick wasn't sure he should laugh or not, so he passed her an awkward smile instead. "Then, okay, I will tell you, sir." "Sir, just call me Rick." "Rick?" No, Elise wasn't comfortable with calling him that. They never called their ministers by name. It sounded really odd. "What do you want to call me then?" His eyebrows were raised, urging her to be free and speak her mind. "Pastor Rick is fine," he chuckled. "Okay, Pastor Rick it is. Elise had been working with Mrs. Clark since she turned age 13. The Clarks had been so accommodating and friendly to Elise. They didn't have any kids and they took her as their own. Before working for Mrs. Clark, Elise used to go to school. She did exceptionally well in school, and all her teachers commended her hard work. Unfortunately, she had to leave school when her grandmother, Mona, the woman who had been taking care of Elise since she was 6 months old. Grandma Mona was the only family member Elise knew. They were as tight as thieves. From a little girl, Mona always took Elise with her to church. They spent their weekends serving Jesus. But now, Grandma Mona was very sick. She had developed what the doctors called arthritis. The pains were getting more severe as she got older and Grandma Mona could no longer work. They also didn't have enough to pay at the hospital for treatments. Before long, there was barely enough money to eat and cater to their basic necessities. The responsibility of providing their daily meal fell on Elise's shoulders. She was lucky enough that the Clarks treated her well. Wow, that's a lot, he exclaimed. By then, she and Pastor Rick were at the beach. As she said, it was directly across the inn, so they could both return quickly. The sound of the waves was music to Elise's ears. She was so used to coming there when she was less busy. She would take off her slippers and walk into the water. Her feet felt so relaxed when she walked barefoot on the moist sand. Elise loved the pee, but today she didn't do that even though her hands itched to run against the rush of the waters. Yes, I've been working at Mrs. Clark since then. How long has this been? That's 6 years ago. There's no point returning to school now. The breeze blew against her face and her hair swept up. Elise didn't readjust it. It was one of the things she loved about the beach, the surreal feeling of the cool breeze on the scalp. What plans do you have for the future? Stay here and do what? I don't have a plan, just using the little I make from here to provide Grandma for her medications and myself. How about you come work for me? Are you not going back to America anymore? I am, but I could bring you with me. My wife is pregnant. We would require someone to help with the house chores. Elise didn't know Pastor Rick was married. He bore no wedding band and he looked so young. She maintained a straight expression so her shock wouldn't be evident to him as he never took his eyes off her face. I am an attorney. Our home is a really busy one and she wouldn't be up to some tasks with being pregnant. Nothing much, you might just have to help her with hosting guests and some small events. He paused when he saw the look of joy on her face. Not immediately, I must add. You have to come join us later on. Leaving Montego Bay wasn't in Elise's plan. She never dreamed of leaving Jamaica. At least not in the next 10 years, and definitely not to America. She couldn't hide her happiness. Her face lifted, and she bared her teeth in a smile. Is that true? Yes, I promise. Mark my words, I'll send for you. Elise didn't believe him despite his promises. Many people traveled down to Montego Bay, made promises, and left without fulfilling them, but she gave him the benefit of the doubt. After work, she rushed home to inform her grandmother, Grandma Mona. She couldn't hide her excitement when she got home. She pushed the door open and hurried to the room. Elise and her grandmother shared the same room. There was just one room in the house, a sitting room, a tiny kitchen, and a restroom. The house was pretty small, but it accommodated all their belongings. They didn't have much. What is it, dear? Grandma Mona was lying on the bed. She sat up straight when Elise sat on the bed. How are you? Have you eaten? Elise had the habit of hugging her grandmother close whenever she got back from work. She would ask if she had eaten, what time she ate, and if she took her medications at the appropriate time. It had become a routine for Elise. I am fine. How was work? What happened? You sounded so happy. I am doing fine too. I am very happy, but I don't want to get my hopes up. Elise picked at her nails. It had become an unstoppable habit of hers. What happened? Her grandma moved closer to Elise. I met a man from America today. A man. There are lots of them here nowadays. How does that make you happy? Grandma. Mona pretended to be deep in thoughts, then her face lifted up. Did he propose marriage? Marriage? No now, why would you say that? Elise tapped the older woman playfully. Not marriage, Ma. He wants to take me to America. Ah, Grandma Mona shouted. America? Why? To work for his family. His wife is pregnant. They need someone to help in the house. Like a maid? Yes, I met him at the Clarks. So he asked about school before asking me to come with him to America. His name is Pastor Rick. A pastor? Yes, he is close to the Clarks, Grandma. I want to go so we can make enough money to buy your medications and take good care of you. Grandma Mona sighed deeply. I know, Elise. It is a good idea. The thing is, I'm not sure I want any of my offspring far away from me. It is not easy, you know. How will I ever get to see you? Again? You will see me, Grandma. We will make an arrangement. I will send messages home. Don't worry. Her grandma didn't say anything again about her traveling to America with Pastor Rick anymore. Elise knew her mind was heavy, even if she never spoke. Grandma Mona went with her to meet Pastor Rick the next day. He explained in detail who he was to keep her grandmother's mind at rest. Mrs. Clark was also involved in the discussion, which meant she had to let Elise go. It wasn't tough to get Mrs. Clark to agree since she knew Pastor Rick and his remarkable reputation in the church. She also vouched for Elise and her competence. Then they waited in anticipation until Pastor Rick sent for her. A month passed without hearing anything from him. Elise had taken her mind off the promise. Mrs. Clark mentioned Pastor Rick once in a while, assuring Elise that he would keep to his words. She was so sure he would. Come back for Elise. After all, his wife is pregnant, Mrs. Clark always added. Elise agreed, but she thought he might have gotten a replacement. Maybe someone closer to Florida. Was the replacement smarter? Did she speak more fluently? Elise couldn't help but imagine. However, about 5 weeks later, Pastor Rick kept to his words, and he did send for Elise. Her grandmother was very happy for Elise, but also sad at the prospect of losing her only granddaughter and companion. It was a roller coaster of emotions for both of them. They were happy because the pay was nice, but it was also hard to let each other go, not after they had been together all these years. I am sorry things had to go this way, Elise. Elise watched her grandmother sniff. It's okay, you just take the medications, we will be fine. She kept dabbing at the tears, but Elise refused to cry. She didn't cry in front of her grandma, because she had shed enough tears during the days they waited for her departure. Elise would leave the room at night to cry in the bathroom just so no one else would see and hear her. Stay strong, stay focused, keep your mind on Jesus. Pray and read your Bible every day. Those were Grandma Mo's parting words. Those words stay imprinted in Elise's mind. She wanted to make her Grandma Mona proud, and she vowed that she will do her best and keep those words as a promise to her grandmother. 2. The sound of the buses woke Elise from her slumber. She looked around and discovered she had fallen asleep while waiting for the Rosses to pick her up. Her stomach rumbled loudly. She hadn't eaten anything since she got down from the train. It has been an hour since she called them on the phone Pastor Ross sent to her. Did they not get her message? Night was falling around her quickly, and she was just sitting in an area that she knew nothing about. Elise thought about walking down the street and asking everyone about Pastor Ross. He should be popular in the area. A man tapped her while she was lost in her thoughts. She jolted up and realized it was Pastor Rick. He looks just the same, well, except for a few stubs on his usually cleanly shaved beards. Behind him stood a woman in a brown suit. She was beautiful. That must be his wife, Elise thought. Pastor Rick. Elise wasn't sure how she was to greet him, so she held her duffel bag tightly. Instead, nay. Welcome, Elise, he smiled sweetly at her. Elise felt butterflies move in her belly. This is my wife, Ruth. Facing his wife, he said, Ruth, this is Elise. Elise waved, but the woman pulled her into a hug instead. Her protruded tummy brushed against Elise. Bless you. How was your journey? Sorry for the delay. We had a church service. Ruth's hug felt warm and she smelt of fruits. Elise liked the woman instantly. She hadn't been sure when she saw her. I am fine, Ma. The journey was a bit long, she replied shyly. They helped her load her luggage, which was not much, and she got in the back of their car and made their way home. Come see your room. I have prepared it for you the day Rick got home and announced that you would be coming to stay with us. Do you like it? Don't worry, you will get to see the wall. Color much better in the morning when the sun comes up. I hope you feel comfortable throughout your stay. Thank you, Ma, Elise replied shyly. Come on, just call me Ruth. We are friends now. You can tell me anything. I am here for you, as you are for me. Okay, I should let you rest now. You look so tired. Sweet dreams. Ruth hugged her one more time that night. Good night. Tonight. Ruth popped her head into the room. I'll show you around the house tomorrow. And she did as she said. Very early the following day, they had breakfast. Elise woke up to the table already set. She felt really embarrassed that she had slept in and given a wrong impression on her first day of work. It was Ruth that even woke her. Do you like the colors? That was how Ruth replied to her good morning. Yes, May. I really like the colors. Peach and cream colors blend so perfectly. Cream is my favorite color. Now that's the longest I've heard you speak since you got here. It was Pastor Rick. He announced his presence with his words, the smell of his cologne, and the rap of his shoe laying against the floor. Good morning, Pastor Rick. Good morning. I hope you are adjusting really well to the place. Yes, I am. Good. Let's eat. One thing Elise noticed about Pastor was his bluntness and straightforwardness. He was a man of little words and he exuded confidence. He was admirable, Elise admitted. Ruth did show her the whole house and Elise loved it. There were 3 rooms altogether, one for Pastor Rick and Ruth, the second on which she stayed the night before, and the last one was for the baby. The baby's room wasn't painted, but the painting and decoration items were there already. Ruth Ross was quite friendly. Her smile radiated every moment, and she tried at every opportunity to make Elise comfortable. I was thinking about doing the painting after the baby is born. That way we can decorate together and conveniently. Wow. Yes, dear, it is a girl. What colors did you get for the walls? Similar ones to yours. The designs will only differ a bit. I'll run you through it all. That was how they got so close. They watched television together, cooked, sang, and read books together. The only thing Elise couldn't do was sew clothes but could mend clothes using needles and thread only. Ruth promised to let her use her sewing machine and even train her much later. So Elise assisted Ruth while she made beautiful clothes for her baby. Ruth talked about everything, unlike Elise. They were in the kitchen one evening when Ruth asked about Elise's mother. So tell me, Elise, what about your mother? Rick told me about your story. Quite sad, I must say. Hey, I don't have a mother. Everyone has a mother, child. What happened to yours? Elise didn't respond. Instead, she stared outside the window and watched as people passed. A piece of familiar Jamaican music was playing on the stereo. Mine died when I was little. Ma'am? My mother left. Elise heaved a sigh. Although she tried not to care, she had wondered how her mum could do that. Why not take her along? Every year, she hoped to get a message. Anything. Nothing came and she lost all hope. They all stopped hoping. Where did she go? Do you have an idea? London. That's what Grandma Mona told me. Did she get relocated because of love? Or marriage? For work? Greener pastures? That's understandable. She might reach out soon enough. Grandma and I just concluded that she's dead. A lot could have happened in the space of 19. I am sorry you had to go through that. Ruth moved close to her and patted her on the back. Her hand felt warm against her back, and Elise relaxed into it.